Hello, everyone. Welcome to another podcast session at Pagesofpandora. I'm your host, Mansi Jain. And today we have with us an educator, a psychologist, a poet warrior, a human rights activist, and a motivational speaker, Dr. Dipen Shah. For over 14 years, he has guided NEET students, counseled minds, and inspired thousands with his words. Now he brings us a powerful story as the author of The Fourth Fall, a book about loss, healing, and starting over. Let's get into it and have a real conversation. But before that, would you want to add something to that?
Well, thank you so much for a great introduction. And to all the listeners, Jai Jinendra and Jai Shri Krishna. We are good to go.
Perfect. So, what made the fourth fall different for the characters? Why did that become a turning point instead of just another loop?
So I think every low was a turning point, but ultimately the final fall, it was a moment of self-realization. And that's why that turning point mattered a lot. So I would say this book is not just a self-help book, it's a book for self-realization as well. And it's not necessary that everyone has gone through similar experiences, but when they meet such people who have gone through certain types of distress, and this realization through this book will help them that what can be done in such moments of distress for someone.
Mhm. So I want to ask you, how was the fourth fall different than the rest of the third fall? Because in the other three falls, he was thinking of himself as a failure. He was thinking that he was not a good person. But in the fourth fall, he just had a very good realization and awakening of a sort. So how was it different?
That's how the healing journey is.
Mhm.
Sometimes that I genuinely believe that sometimes to let go of the pain, you have to live through the pain. And I think the character has lived through that pain. And that is why he was able to realize certain profound things that what should matter in life.
Wow. So as someone who understands human behavior deeply, do you think the character had an easier or harder time processing their own emotions?
So you're asking about the character had an easier or harder time?
Yeah.
I think the character was never processing the emotions. He was just suppressing them. And that is why it took a long time for him to have a realization. And if to ask whether it was easier or harder time, then if I may ask, if I poke you with a pin, or I poke you with a knife, or I poke you with a sword, what would be more painful?
The one with the sword, right?
So basically, that is our subjective experiences. But the point is, anything objectively is going to create pain. So people, for the negative experiences in their life, they experience just pain. And we cannot compare and we cannot compete with the pain as such. So anyone would have a very harder time to go through those moments of pain. And the character also displays that. It was very difficult.
Fair. And what about people who experience everything too deeply, right? So when they're happy, they're extremely happy. And when they're sad, they're the saddest person on the planet. And I felt like the main character was somewhat similar to that. So what advice would you want to give to people like this?
In psychological terms, if someone is showing overly happiness, we call it as mania. Sometimes certain about rock bands or something like this. So that craziness, that mania can last for momentary, but someone has to come to a neutral point every time. Similarly, it goes for the sadness as well. When it is too much, then in psychological terms, we call it as depression. So coming back to the neutral point, which is called as coming back to zero, that's also very essential. And then you can start progressing life above zero.
So how can we as an individual balance something like this?
Uh, I think everyone keeps on talking about the spiritual aspect as well, but it is overly simplified at the same time. It's very complex. A simple 5 minutes of meditation can do wonders, but then people say, "यो 5 minute नहीं होता है, कुछ ना कुछ thoughts घूमते रहते," and that is the moment of self-realization. कि क्यों इतना ये बेचैनी है? What are we worrying about? And same thing goes for mindfulness. Like right now, we are mindful about each and everything at this current moment. We were so conscious about everything, but that mindfulness brought a lot of alertness, focus. So that is what is required: the mindfulness and certain spiritual dimension to your life.
You said something about meditation. I personally have tried it and I fell asleep when I did it. So, do you have any suggestion as to how we can improve this?
Correct. Like in therapy, what we do is we do progressive muscle relaxation as well, which is also called as guided meditation. हम खुद से काफी चीज करेंगे तो sometimes we fall into a pit. Right. But when someone else is there for guiding us, it creates that way that we can uplift our spiritual aspect as well. And spirituality, as per me, just means being calm in the chaos. Because chaos is always going to be there, but you have to find our calmness in spite of the chaos. Oh, I really like that. I genuinely like that. How does the character navigate the battle between intellect and instinct while healing? Does he ever learn to trust one more than the other? So it's between intellect and instinct. Yes. I think just like everyone, the character also had the survival instinct, somehow to keep surviving and going ahead with the challenges of life. जो भी roles है, responsibilities है, वो तो perform करने ही है. So instinct is always there. But then intelligence helps us to know our patterns of behavior. And that comes through introspection. So जब तक हम एक ठहराव नहीं लाएंगे, will not be able to introspect. हमको ये लगेगा कि दूसरा ही गलत है, मैं पूरी तरह से सही हूँ. And that is why the intellect helps. And apart from intellect, I would also say the final fall brought the intuitiveness as well. Sometimes intuition also brings us clarity. So I think it was those moments of intuitiveness where he confronted the core self. That basically, what am I? Am I just failure as this, that? So that intuition sometimes plays a huge role. Okay, so intellect and instinct, we can also call that heart versus brain, can we? I agree. Yes. So if you want to make a decision on the basis of your heart or your brain, what would you suggest? This is a pattern that I always True. I agree. But so basically, we should not categorize. We have to find the perfect balance. कुछ लोग बोलते हैं रैशनल है तो उसमें भी लोग रिमार्क्स पास करते हैं ये बहुत ज्यादा ओवरली प्रैक्टिकल है. समवन इज इमोशनल, उसमें भी लोग कमेंट करते हैं ये बहुत ज्यादा इमोशनल है. बट बेसिकली वी हैव टू एक्नॉलेज इन व्हाट वी फाइंड द परफेक्ट बैलेंस. लाइक movies देखते I also cry. I'm okay with it. I can feel the emotion, but I cannot get carried away because I know that's a real life, and the real life heroes are people like us who are going through those pain, but not just going through, growing through it. Fair. Is there a psychological tactic to find the balance? Maybe because you study mind. Yes, basically therapy helps to overcome the negative thought patterns. जिसको हम बोलते हैं कि ants. Ants is automatic negative thoughts. So those practice thoughts over a period of time, they become our belief patterns. Okay. And that is why we have to understand and highlight those negative thought patterns and then transform them into positive. And there's a therapy which is suggested that's called as CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. So it works on the thought process क्योंकि जो भी हम सोचेंगे वैसे ही हमारे feelings generate होंगे. जैसा feelings generate होगा वैसा हमारा behavior होगा. फिर हमारा behavior वैसे again हमारे thoughts. So the cycle continues. So if it's a negative thought, it's going to create a negative emotion. And a passive behavior. Again, the cycle will continue. So to strike a balance, we have to identify the limiting negative beliefs कौन से हैं, and we have to transform them slowly and gradually. I think even our main character struggles with this. He's constantly telling himself, I am not this perfect guy, I'm not a perfect son, I'm not a perfect husband. So would there be an advice that you would want to give him in the initial falls when he was facing? No, it was required. It was essential. All the falls were necessary to reach to a level of that healing journey. Everyone has to go through that phases sometimes. But as you asked, कि क्या ऐसा कुछ किया जा सकता है? People should not hesitate for taking therapy. हम बोलते रहते हैं कि बहुत स्टिग्मा है इन चीजों के बारे में. I wanted to understand what does this stigma mean. Stigma actually means disgrace. So अगर मुझे सर्दी जुकाम के लिए अगर ट्रीटमेंट लेने जाना पड़ रहा है तो आई डोंट फील एनी डिसग्रेस. बट फॉर मेंटल हेल्थ इश्यूज हम किसी को बता नहीं सकते, शेयर नहीं कर सकते, लोग सोचेंगे ये पागलपन है, तो इट फील्स लाइक डिसग्रेस. एंड जस्ट टू हैव अ बिट ऑफ अ पर्सनल डिस्क्लोजर, आई एम अ डेंटल सर्जन बेसिकली. Oh, that's yeah. Interesting. And I practiced for 6 years as a surgeon, and there came a moment in my life where I went into depression. And I would take therapy for almost 6 months. And then I felt like, oh, it's so invisible. Like my family members used to say, "Kya to doctor itne se depression mein ja sakta hai," but then this can strike anyone. And then I decided I want to pursue my career in this, and I pursued my master's in psychology, and that changed the direction of my life. And that's why the name of my clinic is Disha Clinic. Disha means direction. Wow. So to find a new direction, that is what is required in life. So ये stigma को हमको overcome करना है. And by sharing this my story of depression, it's nothing like a disgrace. It was a phase, and I've grown out of it. So does studying psychology help you at all with any of your mental problem? Were you able to identify this is something that is a problem with me? True, true. I absolutely could identify, and still I am creating that awareness because my mom is also very religious, and कभी कुछ बोलता हूँ कि इसके लाइफ में ये चल रहा है वो चल रहा है, she's like उनको बोलो नौकर गद्दी गिर के सो जाए and they will be fine. But then वो introspection is very much required. So it helped me. The psychological journey helped me to identify. Like initially, to share, I always felt that me time जैसा कुछ नहीं होता. It is always we time. But then I realized individuals need their personal space as well to help them refresh and come back. So I think introspection works very well. One must pursue psychology. Wow. Yeah. I studied it, but I found it boring. Nothing it was for me. Okay. So there are many breakdowns throughout the story. How do you tell the difference between something falling apart and something falling into place? Oh, something falling apart and something falling into place. Yes. Okay. So even if this glass falls, everything falls over here, and then we feel, "Arey, there is no hope right now. हम इस चीज को वापस से reconstruct कर सकते हैं." If there's no hope, it's falling apart. But in spite of everything demolished, if we still have hope, that faith, that means things are going to fall into place. Recently, I visited a church, and वहाँ पे मैंने एक quote पढ़ा that prayer doesn't change anything. And I was like, "Acha, prayer doesn't change anything." So the quote further said that the prayer changes us, and we change things. So those prayers are a sort of affirmations to our subconscious mind, and that gives us the faith, the strength, and the hope. And जब तक ये है, जब तक हम हैं तब तक उम्मीद कायम है. So I think that will help to fall things into place eventually. So you believe that we need to fail for things to fall into place? Not necessarily. Like एक चीज में ये मानता हूँ कि काफी बार हम खड्डे में गिर के कुछ सीखते हैं. You fall into a pit and then you realize how to come out of it. And there are certain people who observe someone has fallen into the pit and they learn through that. But for certain things, experiential learning is required. So we can learn from other people's dilemmas, how they bounce back in life. We can learn from that as well. So do you believe in this, that failure is redirection at times? That's the way we should approach at life. Okay. If we always hold back at failures, we'll always remain stuck at it. We need to unstuck. And I think it's not our personal way of thinking, it's the societal beliefs. And that is what bombards us every day. And that's why we are in a race, but there is no finish line to it. I have also seen that people keep on saying failure is the first step towards success. But when we actually go with failure, we just feel so demotivated to again start the journey or to do anything for that matter. So, how would you suggest an individual can deal with things like this? I think वो failure की वजह से काफी बार self doubts create होना शुरू हो जाते हैं. And at the same time, it also depends on our environment, how our role models are helping us cope with that. And that those role models, first of all, are going to be our parents. ऐसा माना जाता है कि लोग थेरेपी में जाते हैं तो थेरेपिस्ट सिर्फ चाइल्डहुड चीजों पे ब्लेम कर देते हैं. But those are our first role models. Then our teachers, our friends, and how do they show their way of coping? Sometimes we mimic that. Okay. So it is required that slowly and gradually we can cope up without having. I think one of the major emotions that I've experienced in people is shame. फेलियर हो गया तो वो शर्मिंदगी महसूस होती है, पर वो बोलेंगे भी नहीं कि मैं शर्मिंदा हूँ. Shame, the moment you start showing that, okay, I'm ashamed about it, but I no longer wish to be. हम जितना उसको hidden चीज में रखेंगे, that means वो shame और overpower करेगा. Right, right. We want to एक acne भी हो गया तो हमको उसको छुपाना है, एक white hair है उसको छुपाना है because we feel shame. And one of the recent courses that I completed, what I observed is guilt as an emotion एक बच्चे में आता है by the age of 2.5 years. But shame create होता है at 15 months of age. एक छोटे बच्चे को 15 महीने से ही शर्मिंदगी महसूस करवाई जा सकती है, वो कर सकता है. And those beliefs when we carry in our adulthood, that creates a barrier sort of a thing. कि failure को हम self doubt and उसमें लेके जाते. That was a very interesting fact. I did not know कि 15 महीने के बच्चे को. I was also fascinated. So I think वो psychology में interest और आएगा the moment we learn about the developmental psychology. Mm-hmm. I think what I learned was quite basic, and I felt like ये सब मुझे पता है कि मैं क्यों पढ़ूं. But there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of depth to psychology as well. And हर individual को अपने genre के हिसाब से book read करना चाहिए. Right. Like I suggest books depending on the kind of issue someone is facing. Right. अभी relationship का issue तो मैं उनको meditation के लिए नहीं बोलूँगा. Right. I will tell them to read about 5 languages of love. Fair. So according to the type of challenges one is facing, one has to align themselves. Okay, since we are on recommendation, please help me. My career is falling apart. Oh, career? Yes, so some psychological advice to recommendation for someone in their early 20s because I'm pretty sure our audience is also in that field. Okay. So you mentioned your career is falling apart, but then there was a hope with hope you asked me, so things are going to fall into place for you as well. And for career, two books I have loved. One is Think and Grow Rich. Mm-hmm. So when I tell people, अच्छा हम पैसे वाले बन जाएंगे, no, it is through thinking, through thought patterns. And उसमें series of chapters है with a common moral. But अगर consistently उस moral को हम churn करेंगे, our mindset will become like that. That's why Napoleon Hill. Yeah, very. Yes. So that is one of them. And the other book is, which I have phenomenally loved, is You're a Badass. Oh, I really love the title. The title, yeah. Sometimes कुछ लोगों को titles ऐसा लगता है, अरे. But then I usually do not read about the authors. I start reading the book, and फिर book reading करते करते, then it creates an interest कि मुझे भी author के बारे में और जानना है. And after reading the book and seeing that, okay, this author is a female, and I was like, oh wow. Because society में ऐसा mindset आता है, it is only the male figures who are dominating the hierarchy, but it's not like that. There are females as well who are equally dominating in career as well. So You're a Badass is one such great book. Is it non-fiction? Sorry? Is it non-fiction? Yeah, it is. So any fictional recommendations have been the character is struggling in the 20s, but somehow things work out. The way we have the fourth point, yes. Because this book gave me hope, things will be better, things will be okay. So I'm looking for something like this. There's also a book called, the name is Tuesdays with Maury. Mm-hmm. It's about different aspects of life. That is also a beautiful book. Perfect. I'll check it out. What would you advise as a psychologist to someone who's still deeply in love with someone that they have lost either through death or distance? And, through death or distance, people lose. And sometimes it's not just loss of a loved one, it is loss in a career, loss of our previous version, loss of our health, and that becomes very difficult. But I believe you have to accept the good with the bad. If the amount of bad is too much, that means someone is in a toxic relationship. It needs to be, you have to let go. But if the amount of good is immense, then you have to start accepting the goodness and just uh, dilute that something which has gone wrong. If someone has lost someone, so what we focus is the life is series of dots. लेकिन जो end point आया है, sometimes we are just stuck at that. कि इस इंसान को हमने खो दिया है. There are a lot of things to be said. There are a lot of things that हम शायद share कर सकते थे. But we are just focusing on the final point. But life is full. It's a bigger thing. So I think one has to have a gratitude कि मुझे इतने साल इस individual के साथ मिला है. Why am I just giving it the final conclusion as it makes the entire life so ugly and bad? और इसके लिए वो आनंद मूवी में राजेश खन्ना का एक डायलॉग है कि जिंदगी बड़ी होनी चाहिए, लंबी नहीं.
Right. So that is what we have to look at the larger picture of life. And larger picture is always good. It's always That's a very positive answer that you gave. It gives hope, that things are going to be better. Throughout the book, the character seems haunted by the idea that he's not enough. Enough. Not as a husband, not as a son, not as a man. How does he even begin to rewrite that character? So again, as the character feels that he's not good enough, as so many roles that he is performing, I think the entire society is obsessed with that I'm not good enough. आपने ये किया, you're not good enough in this thing. आपके इंस्टाग्राम पे इतने फॉलोअर्स नहीं, you're not good enough. आपके यूट्यूब पे इतने मिलियन बिलियन व्यूज नहीं, you're not good enough. आपका वेल्थ इतना ही है, we also feel this is not good enough. We'll never be good enough. We can only be enough. That is what we have to realize. In this moment, I have enough. Otherwise, a never ending race. I'm not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And we are not going to appreciate what is there in the present moment. Is my answer good enough? Yeah. No, it is enough. That was very nice. But we always feel कि हाँ ये और good enough हो सकता है. शायद हम वापस हमारा podcast देख रहे we could have done this, that was not good enough. No, this is enough. At this point of time, it is enough. I feel like that comes with a lot of maturity, maybe. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. What's one self-sabotage pattern the character keeps repeating, and does he ever become aware of it? Yeah, the character becomes aware, but quite late. And that self-sabotaging behavior, or it's a self-defeating behavior, is about self-doubt. So self-doubt itna hai, and whenever we are in self-doubt, what happens is we start rejecting ourselves. Then self-rejection a lot. And जब वो self-rejection आएगा, it will lead to self-punishment. And when the readers read the book, they will realize this pattern कि जब self doubt है, self rejection है, self punishment भी आ रहा है. And later on, quite in the story, the character has a profound realization, and then the self acceptance comes. Wow. Self rejection, self acceptance, and there was one thing more. Self punishment because of the self rejection, and we start punishing ourselves. मतलब अगर मैं कोई इंटरव्यू में अगर रिजेक्ट हो गया हो या मुझे प्रमोशन नहीं मिला, विल नॉट गो आउट एंड हैव फन. हमको ऐसा लगेगा नहीं, हमको थोड़ा दुखी ही रहना चाहिए, हमको अपने आप को और गियर अप करना है, ये करना है. सो वी स्टार्ट पनिशिंग अवरसेल्व्स, या फिर उसी पनिशमेंट को वी कंसिस्टेंटली प्ले इट इन आवर माइंड. किसी को अगर किसी ने अगर एक साइकिल भी चुरा ली हो और उसको कितनी बार सजा मिलनी चाहिए उसकी? एक बार, दो बार, तीन बार, कितनी बार सजा मिलती? तो एक पनिशमेंट की एक गलती की सजा एक ही बार मिलनी चाहिए. बट वी कीप ऑन रिपीटिंग दैट इन आवर माइंड एंड वी स्टार्ट पनिशिंग आवरसेल्व्स. तो एक बार कर लिया, एंड देन वी हैव टू फॉरगिव आवरसेल्व्स. We have to be kinder to ourselves a lot. Kinder. And that kindness is very rare to see. But through this podcast, I think the kindness will also grow in people. I think there's kindness for other people, but there's not kindness for yourself. True. So that इसके लिए therapy में सिखाना पड़ता है लोगों को self compassion. There is a technique that we use in therapy that is called as the empty chair technique. कि अगर ये सामने अगर ये इंसान है और वो same phase से go through कर रहा है, what will you tell them? And they become so compassionate. मैं उनको बोलता नहीं, उनको ऐसा बोलो ना, अरे यार मर जा, तेरी जिंदगी भी वही जिंदगी है. We don't say that. We become compassionate because compassion is our humanistic nature. But for ourselves, we get very critical. I agree. Yeah, and that is because probably the belief pattern that we have accumulated over a period of time. कभी और हम बच्चे को भी बोलते हैं, तो अगर ऐसा करेगा नहीं, you're a good boy. ऐसा नहीं कि oh you are a bad boy. तो काफी बार वो कैटेगरीज क्रिएट कर लेते हैं, ये गुड है, ये बैड है, ऐसा हुआ तो ही अच्छा है, इसके अलावा everything is bad. And this we call it in psychology as black and white thinking. Everything is not going to be black and white. We have to accept different areas of gray as well. Yeah, I agree to this. I also have a tendency to look at things in black and white. I had a tendency as well. तो ऐसा होता ही है, हर चीज में black and white, and that is where introspection plays a role. कि क्या मैंने black and white ही apply किया है? Is my acceptance very minimalistic right now? And one has to accept. So if one is judging themselves too critically, your advice would be to look at themselves from a third person point of view. Absolutely. That's why that empty chair technique helps them to realize कि हम दूसरे के लिए इतने compassionate और खुद के लिए इतने harsh.
है ना, हम दोस्तों के लिए कितना एंकरेज, लोग बोलते भी थेरेपी में, मैं मेरे दोस्तों के लिए बहुत अच्छा मोटिवेशन दे पाती हूँ, बट खुद के लिए पता नहीं क्यों नहीं हो पा रहा है, बिकॉज यू हैव टू डेवलप दैट सेल्फ कंपैशन, दैट इज ऑल्सो प्रैक्टिस बेसिकली. This comes as a practice. You have to do certain things like journaling helps a lot. और उसमें पता चलता है कि हमारा warm, friendly way है कि नहीं to talk with ourselves. That is what we call it as a coach mindset and not just always a critical mindset. Is there a specific way in which someone can journal to be more compassionate, or journaling is just like इनिशियली तो जर्नलिंग जो भी आ रहा है, जो भी सबकॉन्शियस माइंड में वो पैटर्न्स है, इट शुड रिफ्लेक्ट इन द जर्नल, बट देन द थेरेपी we help them to transform those thought patterns. It has to be done with a professional, which will help them. But otherwise, also there is a book which can help. Like in arts and also पढ़ने की book है. One has to read that and उसको digest करना. The name of the book is Feeling Good. Okay. And I think the reason why we are communicating right now is to feel good. Mhm. So feeling good is a way how you can manage your thought patterns and we can feel good in spite of whatever has happened in your life. Okay, okay, fair enough. If someone is in the middle of the first fall right now, just as confused and broken, what's the one thing this character would want them to hear? Like, what's the one thing that you would want the character to hear? Uh, you are not alone. Mhm. But that is not help, you know. Like I have seen people say you are not alone, but it is not help at all. And that is why I mentioned intuition. That intuitiveness will say that you're not alone, but I myself have to take a stand for myself. अगर दुनिया में कोई नहीं लेगा तो आपके लिए कौन खड़ा होगा? Sometimes in therapy we confront also कि कोई नहीं है आपके लाइफ में, ठीक है, अब कौन करेगा? And sometimes they don't have any answer, पता नहीं, ये भी नहीं है, वो भी नहीं है. Then आप खुद तो हो. You have to take charge of your own things at times. I like that. You are the only reliable person in life, right? You can only count on yourself at the end of the day. True, true. Till you find your soulmate or true companion. You believe in that? I do believe in that, and I also believe there's nothing called as love. That is two contradictory statements. You'll have to explain. So I feel that initially it's all convenience. जब तक convenience है, things are fine. Mhm. Love grows out of struggle. In those difficult moments, फिर भी जो इंसान आपके साथ रहे, साथ दे, that's where the love grows from. और इसीलिए हमारा ये अनकंडीशनल हमारे पेरेंट्स के साथ होता है. झगड़ा भी होता है काफी बार, आर्ग्यूमेंट्स भी होते हैं, but there is that unconditional love that we get. जब हम बीमार भी पड़ते हैं, they don't just disown us. Right. And same relation we have to create with ourselves. Are we disowning ourselves or we own up? So we have to own up ourselves as well. And in those moments of struggle, हमारा खुद से एक रिश्ता भी बहुत stronger develop होगा, I guess. Wow. Generally, that was very nice and very helpful. After four falls and so many redirections, what's the character's new definition of success? Uh, success means a lot differently to a lot of people. Right. तो उस पे अर्ज किया है. लोगों ने कामयाबी में सुकून ढूंढा, तो वो भागते चले गए. और हमने सुकून में कामयाबी ढूंढी तो हम रुक गए. इतना तो जीना भी नहीं है यारो जितना तू मर मर के जी रहा है. So I think we need to find success in peace. Whatever gives you peace, that's the definition of success. Otherwise, you're never going to be good enough. Even if it's financially not that satisfying, like there is a pressure on people who are in their 20s to have so and so amount of money by their 30s or late 30s. And there are times when something that you're passionate about, it does not pay well, right? But you're in debt with it. So that's very contradictory thing again. So that acceptance eventually develops with maturity. Early years में ऐसा होता है कि quick money चाहिए, इसमें invest कर दे, उसमें कर दे और जल्दी ये मिल जाए. If I ask you, do you want happiness or success? Right, success. Success. And success मिलेगी, but आप खुश नहीं होगे. चलेगा हमें. नहीं चलता. And people want both. क्यों? I'm very greedy. मुझे happiness भी चाहिए, success भी चाहिए. But eventually we want to be happy. We want to feel good. Success है लेकिन family नहीं है. Success है लेकिन मेरे पास अच्छी health नहीं है. So we want every aspect of life, not just success. So if you want to be happy, one way to have happiness is stop comparing. We rob ourselves of happiness the moment we start comparing. कि इसने अच्छा ये किसने ये टाइमलाइन सेट किया है कि 20 साल में इतना अचीव करना है, 25 में इतना, 30 में इतना, 40 में इतना. And that is why there are certain role models who are there in the society at the age of 60 70 also they grow their businesses. So success ये हमें खुद का अपना एक definition बनाना ही है, not based on what others have put pressure on us. I think passion should override pressure. If you're passionate about something, continue doing that. You're going to be successful once you start celebrating it. Okay. I really needed that. Thank you, genuinely. Transformation in this book isn't framed as rising higher, but as shedding what no longer serves. What does the character ultimately shed by the end? So, ये भी है ना एक कंडीशनिंग हो गया सोसाइटी में कि फॉल आया स्ट्रगल आया तो ओवर एंड अबाउट कुछ राइज करना है, वी हैव टू डू समथिंग मैग्निफिसेंट. जो मूवीज में वेब सीरीज में हीरोइक, वी वांट आवर लाइफ टू बी वेरी हीरोइक. एंड दैट्स व्हाट मैंने सिर्फ रियलिटी पोर्ट्रे करने की कोशिश की, द रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी, कि कुछ हीरोइक करने की जरूरत नहीं है. वी हैव टू शेड व्हाटएवर इज नॉट सर्विंग अस. द कैरेक्टर इज accumulated a lot of trash. And we are not trash collectors. Whatever someone is throwing at us, we collect that, those belief patterns and everything. So the character eventually sheds that. This will give us a firm groundedness. Our routines will be very much stable. So life में कुछ भी setback आ जाएगा, we will not be unsettled with that. तो लिखने के लिए तो और 10-12 फॉल्स लिख सकता था मैं इस बुक में, ये भी हुआ ये भी हुआ. Even I mentioned certain aspects of the character's experience through the childhood, but I've not mentioned that as a fall, those are the belief patterns he acquired. And that is why in adulthood he was struggling a lot. Fair. So he's shedding that, and one has to eventually shed those beliefs. अगर मैं आपको बोलूँ ये मुझे पॉइंट पास कीजिए, बट अगर मैं उसको लेना ही ना चाहूँ, I will not receive it. But whatever someone throws at us, we start collecting it. So sometimes we have to set boundaries and say no to things. Do you think as individuals we can practice something to not take any like negativity and not collect rocks from other people? That comes through value system. So ये तो हम ऐसा लग रहा है कि हम थेरेपी में इन्वॉल्व ही हो रहे हैं अभी. But there are certain value systems. So if in general if I ask, do you value freedom or do you value bonding? Freedom or bonding? You can't ask a question like that. Both is important. Both is important. But at some point, if we are choosing freedom, then कहीं ना कहीं bonding compromise हो जाएगा. And जहाँ पे हम bonding prefer करेंगे, थोड़ी बहुत हमारी freedom compromise हो जाएगी. So value system identify करना बहुत जरूरी है individual को. Same goes for love and success. They are opposite. अगर success है तो ambitious बनो. बट फिर ये नहीं रोना है यार मेरे लाइफ में लव क्यों नहीं है, क्योंकि आप शायद नहीं टाइम दे पाए, नॉट जस्ट इन रोमांटिक टर्म्स, आप अपने फैमिली को नहीं टाइम दे पाए. सो ये होगा. बट इफ यू आर वैल्यूइंग लव, देन सक्सेस को कहीं ना कहीं बैक सीट पे रहना पड़ेगा. सो विद दैट फेज ऑफ लाइफ और वैल्यू सिस्टम चेंजेस. अगर आप कुछ साल पहले मुझसे मिलते और पूछते आपकी वैल्यू सिस्टम क्या है, लाइक सक्सेस, you have to take a risk in that particular phase of life. But now, love means everything to me. So the value system we have to identify. Based on that, जब हम अपने personality को समझ लेंगे, we will be flowing. It will not sound as a struggle, because struggle comes because of a lot of resistance. It will become effortless. So you think therapy helps with clarity in terms of value system? True, true. In a lot of sense. So ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ कोई psychological condition के लिए. People also come for confidence, to work on their relationship या फिर career में excel करने के लिए. उनको ऐसा लगता है हम higher authorities को कैसे कुछ बोल सकते हैं. My boss will fire me. वो constant वो डर रहता है. So corporate sector people also experience a lot of distress in their life. And वहाँ पे हम therapy में सिखाते हैं कि communication कैसा होना चाहिए. That is called as assertive communication. क्योंकि जो इंसान एक्सप्रेस नहीं करेगा, मतलब पैसिव होगा, वो एग्रेसिव होगा ही होगा. लोग बोलते नहीं मैं अग्रेसिव नहीं हूँ. जो पैसिव है वो खुद के लिए अंदर या तो अग्रेशन क्रिएट करेगा, काश मैं ये बोल लेता, मुझे क्यों ये सहन करना पड़ा. सो दैट एग्रेशन स्टार्ट्स बिल्डिंग, एंड देन देयर्स एन आउटबर्स्ट ऑफ इमोशंस. एंड कुछ लोगों को लगता है थिंग्स तो वो फाइन, ही वाज कंप्लीटली नॉर्मल, क्या हो गया है. सो दैट इज बिकॉज ऑफ पैसिव अग्रेसिव बिहेवियर. And to overcome that, therapy helps to build that assertiveness in communication. I had no idea therapy helped with confidence as well. Confidence as well. Because that speaks about self-esteem. When we work on the self-esteem, हमारा confidence भी build होना शुरू होता है. And लोगों को self-esteem और self-worth में भी difference नहीं पता होता. And yeah, therapy helps them. Therapy helps. Okay, okay, perfect. Yeah. Guilt or regret? What weighs heavier on the characters or the character throughout this journey? Um, Guilt or regret? Yes. I think the character is experiencing both, but it's important to make a distinction between guilt and regret. हम regret तभी experience करते हैं when the outcome has not gone in our favor. अगर मैंने कहीं पे इन्वेस्ट कर दिया और वो इन्वेस्टमेंट मेरा फेल हो गया, then I regret my decision. But अगर डाला और वो डबल हो गया तो I will like, हाँ, it is a nice decision. So that regrets come through the outcome, focusing a lot on the outcome. But guilt is something, that emotion is because of our perception. You perceive something to be, this was wrong. ये मेरे से बहुत बड़ी गलती हो गई है. And then the character, the guilt is being very heavy. क्योंकि उसको हमेशा ऐसा लग रहा है कि नहीं ये मैंने गलत कर दिया, काश मैं ये कुछ कर सकता, काश शायद वो कुछ कर सकता. So there was no acceptance in the life's events that were occurring back to back. So guilt was being very heavy, and that perception needs to be changed. Would you rather choose being guilty or being regretful? Like just as a person, as per your life that has happened as of now? I've had both, and I think regrets is still a very superficial emotion. It does not affect someone, but guilt is something that breaks from inside. And to overcome the guilt, forgiveness is very important. And एक book है जिसका नाम है Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. It's about a therapist seeking therapy. Yeah, yeah, I know about this. And उस book में बहुत ही beautifully mention किया है कि forced forgiveness नहीं करना है. चलो आज से forgive कर दिया, आज से forgive कर दिया. It will naturally come. But forgiveness to others as well as forgiveness to yourself. To let go of those things and you stop blaming yourself. Because control is never possible. Control is just an illusion. We can control the outcome, we can control this, that. We cannot control anything in life. We have to accept as it happens. We know about this podcast as well. We could not control when we were supposed to shoot this, but it's our choice how we respond to that particular situation. I also want to ask you, I do not consider myself a forgiving person in general. Like, I have a tendency to hold grudges. So, is there any particular advice that you want to give to that? Hold grudges against others? Yeah, I'm not forgiving in general. Like, I'm okay. Holding. So, Mansi ji, can I say I love you? Yeah. It's fine with you? Yeah. So, I love you, Mansi ji. Mm-hmm. Is it about Mansi or is it about Dipen? It's about Dipen. Okay. I love your eyes, Mansi. Mm-hmm. Is it about Mansi's eyes or is it about Dipen? It is about my eyes. Okay. And in the next moment, I say, I hate your eyes. Mm-hmm. Is it about Mansi's eyes or is it about me? It's about you. It's about my perception. So when I say I love you, it's actually not about you. Right. But जब हमको कोई बोलता है I love you, तो हमको बहुत अच्छा लगता है, अरे. Right. But it's about that person. Now when I say I hate you, Mansi, is it about you or is it about me? Your problem. My problem. So the hatred is within me actually. Yeah. And we have to let go of those grudges because that hatred, it harms us only. And that is why कहीं पे कुछ मुझे लोग मिलते हैं, I tell them I love you. कुछ लोग अरे ये क्या love? It's not a romantic love. Right, right. I love you as an individual. I love you as a person because it speaks about me. I want to be that loving person. Wow. I got the free session. It's not a selfful generally. I will generally remember that, everything comes from within. Like your love, your hatred. It's not about other person. It's about you. What's a book that broke you and then slowly rebuilt you? For me, this was this. Thank you. One of the book, I am an avid reader. I read a lot. And ऐसा नहीं कि सिर्फ masters कर लिए psychology में तो you know every aspect. There is a difference between theory and practical as well. So I think one must read a lot of books, the right type of books. So उसमें one of the book which has created a huge impact is 40 Rules of Love. Okay. जिनका रिलेशनशिप इशू होता है तो मैं उनको बोलता हूँ रीड 40 रूल्स ऑफ लव एंड दे आर लाइक अभी ये लव के भी रूल्स पढ़ने पड़ेंगे बट देन दिस बुक इज वेरी डिफरेंट. It's about two stories. One is about the current century, and one is about some 11th or 12th century. About a Sufi poet named Rumi. Yeah. Rumi के बहुत सारे quotes होते हैं, but उस book में establish किया गया है कि रूमी के पीछे कौन था उसको बनाने वाला. So it's not about some rules that has to be followed, but it's the way of loving someone and yourself as well. So it broke me about my misconceptions about love, and then it has rebuilt the kind of loving response I generate. So that book will develop immense amount of compassion, empathy. But अगर किसी को करियर में आगे बढ़ना है तो नहीं. रिलेशनशिप में हाँ, this book is a perfect choice. I read it quite a long time back, and maybe I did not have that intense take. Correct. But then that's what. So maturity. With time, with your experiences, you feel that हाँ ये चीज ज्यादा impactful है. Fair. You convinced me to reread it. Yeah. What's one sentence from your book that you wish people tattooed on their heart? I underlined a lot, so I can give you, but I want you to answer this. One of the profound lines that I have felt is everything is momentary. Everything, nothing is permanent. It's momentary. But certain words, certain creations that we invest our energy in, that will be immortalized. For example, this podcast, right, the teaching, it will be echoed forever. These books. So arts is something in terms of artistic, anything it can be. It can be in terms of speaking, in terms of poetry, in terms of writing, sketching, that will stay forever. People will interpret in different ways, but then eventually everything is momentary. So I fall in love and it's gonna be momentary. So you have to keep falling in love again and again. And that's why some people feel that वो बस थोड़े महीने रहता है प्यार बाद में चला जाता है. You have to create that spark because sometimes in relationship people start taking each other granted a lot. एंड दैट इज व्हाई इट्स मोमेंटरी. कल जो हुआ था आज वापस से करना पड़ेगा. लेट्स से मैं पिछले हफ्ते तो ये शॉपिंग करवा के आया, पिछले हफ्ते तो हम घूम के आए. यू हैव टू इन्वेस्ट इन डिफरेंट वेज, नॉट जस्ट इन वन वे बट डिफरेंट वेज. सो इट इज मोमेंटरी. क्योंकि अगर बहुत गहरा प्यार है तो फिर कभी डिवोर्सेस होने ही नहीं चाहिए सोसाइटी में. कभी ये कोई ये सोच के तो मैरिज नहीं करता कि डिवोर्स लेना है. बट देन देयर आर सर्टेन इंसिडेंसेस व्हिच breaks those couples apart. And वहीं से actually अगर if they still are committed, the love will grow out of that. क्योंकि जितना भी वो सब हुआ it was momentary. संगीत में नाच लिया, ये कर लिया, वो कर लिया, it is momentary. The real life is something beyond all these things, beyond those materialistic things. Wow. I personally feel like this podcast session is turning into a very nice guidance session. I wish I would have met you when I was like 18 or something. Life was very chaotic, Kavi. Would have helped really. You have some very good advice to give, some very great learnings to share. And basically, यही होता है. There's transition in life. After 20, an individual thinks differently. Even there's a transition after 30, transition after 40, even at old age. उनके भी अपने ही अलग issues होते हैं. हमको ऐसा लगता है ये क्या दादा दादी नानी इतना क्या एडवाइस देते रहते हैं. But there is a developmental psychology which suggests that they want to leave behind something. Everyone honestly wants significance. They want to feel significant. एक बच्चा भी अगर क्लास में मस्ती करता है ना तो बेसिकली ही वांट सिग्निफिकेंस. कहीं ना कहीं से मुझे वो अटेंशन मिले, सिग्निफिकेंस मिले. सो you will have your own significance in your own ways. तो ऐसा नहीं कि 18-19 में कुछ मिस आउट हो गया है. The life will show a lot of transitions and will adapt to it. Adaptation is the highest form of intelligence. Okay. Would you rather write a best-selling book that no one remembers or a niche book that changes one's life forever? Best-selling book, but no one remembers. That's yeah. So when I started writing this book, it was 4 years back. So long journey, and the intent was very clear. The book should have a healing impact on someone, even if it's just one soul. And already I have received reviews about it, good, critical, both. But I know this is enough at this point of time, but it has created a difference. So I think the main goal was that only, to create an impact on one life at least. I think we all have that one author, even if they're not popular, they are very close to our heart because they somehow contributed in our life. True. Do you have an author like that for you? You being a therapist? Uh, ऐसा कुछ ये नहीं है कि आई read a lot of books and everything creates an impact. मतलब कभी कभी तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है everyone teaches us something. मेरे बिल्डिंग का सिक्योरिटी गार्ड भी सिखाता है, अरे गुड मॉर्निंग सर, तो कितना चीयरफुल है. हाँ, अगर सिक्योरिटी गार्ड की जॉब दे दे तो मुझे ऐसा लगेगा यार माय लाइफ इज पर्पसलेस, क्या ये बस इतना ही. But he is satisfied with his job, is doing it with cheerfulness. Exactly. So I think that is what is important to understand. Everyone is going to teach us. So you do not have one book that really touched your heart? As I mentioned, 40 Rules of Love is one such book which has really touched the depth of my emotion. और ऐसे भी मैंने एक बार एक पेशेंट को ये सजेस्ट भी किया था, उसमें से भी उस बुक में से एक फ्लॉ उन्होंने ढूंढ के निकाला कि इधर फ्लॉ है. एंड देन आई फेल्ट हाँ, बट हो सकता है व्हाई कैरेक्टर्स कांट बी फ्लॉड. और मैंने बुक में भी एक लाइन आया है, aren't we supposed to be weak in our weakest moments? We are allowed to be weak in our weakest moments. उसमें भी हम expect कर रहे कुछ heroic हो जाए, come on bounce back, अरे ये तो बहुत छोटी चीज है. That is why people compare and compete with pain. So that should not be happening as such. Okay. Many of us go through pain quietly, convincing ourselves we will get over it. Your book title made me think, why is it usually after multiple falls that people finally begin their healing journey? Yeah, the healing journey begins very late. Usually, as you mentioned, stigma is there, but I think the profound emotion is shame. Shame is the major thing which stops people. Sometimes parents be अभी तो awareness काफी है, but ऐसा बोलते, there are some teenagers who come into therapy and उनके parents को बोलते हैं लेकिन और किसी को मत बताना, don't tell your friend that you are into counseling. So shame is a very dominant emotion. Society उसको इस तरह से देखता है कि they look down on such things. And that is why through this podcast, like when I was into therapy, my therapist told me you share your journey about depression. I was like, मैं क्यों सबको बताऊं मैं depression में था. But then I realized I have managed to let go of that shame. Even through this podcast, I have no shame that I went through depression, but I've grown out of it. This can give someone else के यार ऐसा हो सकता है, कोई therapist है, भगवान नहीं है. He is also human. He will experience all these emotions as well. But we have to learn to manage them. So वो लोग शायद खुद से मैनेज करने में इतना बिजी हो जाते हैं, they feel and they tend to ignore such falls, and then it creates when they reach to the edge, and that is where शायद कुछ लोग बोल देते हैं यार थेरेपी, why don't you try therapy, या खुद से वो गूगल करना शुरू कर देते हैं. एंड काफी बार ऐसा भी होता है, पीपल से कि आई वांट टू एंड माय लाइफ, एंड कुछ लोग उसको बोलते हैं ये तो बहुत वीक है, ये तो वीक हार्ट है, उसने ऐसे कैसे बोल दिया, हमने तो इससे ज्यादा देखा है लाइफ में, ये क्या है छोटी सी चीज में. बट बेसिकली व्हेन समवन सेज दैट, जस्ट क्राई फॉर हेल्प, अटेंड टू देम. Don't start with your own struggles and battles कि मेरे लाइफ में ये था वो था, and we start, basically we are not actively listening, we are already create a judgment on that individual. What do you think about AI tools like ChatGPT? Now, like, I can discuss my problems with my AI rather than like feeling ashamed and sharing it with a therapist. How do you feel about that? I've tried AI, ChatGPT में मैंने try किया है, but personally I felt that the responses were very quick. Mm-hmm. I still want an individual to feel it. AI seemed to be a generated response क्योंकि उसको जो prompts देंगे उसके हिसाब से वो respond करेगा. And even healing touch creates a huge impact. Sometimes that में कुछ patients आते हैं, they just want to hug me and cry. Sometimes just holding a hand. और इससे ये connections are important. जब हम socialize करते हैं, friends को high five दिया, एक hug किया, किसी को धक्का मुक्की किया, that has a healing touch. And वो जब तक नहीं मिलेगा, healing becomes very difficult. क्योंकि when someone is experiencing a lot of challenges, they tend to isolate, they withdraw, and then the healing abruptly stops. And that is why socializing हम suggest करते ही हैं. When you start connecting with people, it can be just plants as well. It can be with animals. Sometimes हमारे एरिया में एक पेट क्लिनिक है, वहां पे यू कैन स्टे फॉर हाफ एन आवर 1 आवर एंड कैन प्ले विद डॉग्स. दैट क्रिएट्स अ ह्यूज इम्पैक्ट. अनकंडीशनल लव मिलता है वहां से, कोई कंडीशनिंग नहीं है. सो socializing is important, connecting with others is important. So AI will not replace that emotion of feeling touch. Fair enough. You have seen both physical pain and emotional wounds in your professional life. In your view, how connected are our mental and physical forms? Can we really treat one without the other? Yeah, so the definition of health is also its physical, mental, and social well-being. And apart from physical and mental, I would also mention that spiritual aspect also plays a huge impact. And spiritual is just being mindful. Right now, we are spirited people. हम ऐसा नहीं लो सैड इस तरह से पॉडकास्ट बोल रहे. Our spirits are high in energy. We are encouraged. We are purpose driven. We are not mood driven. मुझे नहीं पता आपका मूड इसके पहले कैसा था, आपको नहीं पता मेरा मूड कैसा था, बट वी आर पर्पस ड्रिवन. यहाँ पे वी आर पुटिंग ऑन 100% ऑफ एनर्जी. एंड ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट है टू रियलाइज. एंड बहुत सारी एनर्जीज यहाँ पे इन्वॉल्व है इस टाइम पे. सिर्फ ये दो स्पिरिट्स ही नहीं है. इट इज inanimate as well as animated. Everything is putting their energy. Behind the cameras होंगे, front of the cameras है, ये टेबल बनाने वाले कोई रहे होंगे. It is all spirited things. So spiritual aspect also plays a role. It is not just physical and mental. Everything has to converge, and that will help a person to evolve in life. Since we're talking about spirituality, I am quite interested in knowing your take on nazar. Like, do you believe in that? Is it a real thing? Is it a superstition? I think मैं इस पर नहीं कमेंट करना चाहूंगा. द रीजन बीइंग इट विल क्रिएट अ बायस इन एवरीवन कि मेरा क्या बिलीफ है. आई थिंक इट शुड बी एन एक्सपीरियंस कि इंडिविजुअल का क्या एक्सपीरियंस है. सो वो फेथ भी हमें हमारे पेरेंट्स से मिलता है. लाइक मुझे मेरी मम्मी बोलती है राइट हैंड से लेना चाहिए चीजों को, राइट पैर ही रखना चाहिए. सो जब तक फेथ है इट्स फाइन. अगर वो सुपरस्टिशन आपको इट इज होल्डिंग यू बैक, देन इट इज डिफिकल्ट. तो नजर लगना ये सब, आई थिंक आई डोंट वांट टू कमेंट कि यो बायस ना क्रिएट हो जाए लोगों में. इट इज वेरी पर्सनल कि उनका क्या कस्टमरी बिलीफ रहा है. एंड दैट इज व्हाई जो हम रिलीजियस एस्पेक्ट को देखते हैं, इट इज गोइंग टू क्रिएट अ बुलेट प्रूफ माइंडसेट. दैट बुलेट प्रूफ माइंडसेट इज रिक्वायर्ड. मतलब हमने पॉडकास्ट की शुरुआत भी की तो मैंने बोला जय जिनेंद्र. नाउ द मीनिंग ऑफ दैट वर्ड इज अपने इंद्रियों को जीतना, टू हैव विनिंग ऑन अवर सेंसेस. We should not be driven by those senses only. Yeah. So all our senses, कुछ देखना ही है, ऐसा ही देखना है, वैसा ही करना है, ऐसा ही खाना है. So we are getting slaved by those our sensory systems only. और इसीलिए fasting हर religion में सिखाया जाता है that we are able to manage ourselves. So I think ये बहुत ही personal चीज है. Experiential उसी चीज पे it will depend. Do you believe in sharing things publicly before you are 100% sure about it? Like, you're just starting out something, but you believe if you share it with anyone else, nazar lag jayega. Like, I just want to know whether you believe in this. Not in terms of nazar lag jayega maybe, but then I think Swami Vivekananda ji का quote है that मैं मुझे recollect अच्छे से नहीं हो रहा, but it's about work hard in silence. Let your success make the noise. Make the noise. है ना. बहुत पहले ही आई थिंक मुझे ऐसा लगता है कहीं ना कहीं वो ऊपर वाला देखता है कि इसमें कुछ ज्यादा एरोगेंस तो नहीं आ रहा, प्राइड तो नहीं आ रहा बहुत जल्दी, एंड वो हमको ग्राउंड पे लेके आता है. आई थिंक द बुक ऑल्सो रिफ्लेक्ट्स दैट अबाउट द कैरेक्टर. तो ऊपर वाला सब नाप तोल के देता है कि हर एस्पेक्ट तुझे देखना है. इट इज मोमेंटरी. तेरे लाइफ में राइज भी आएगा, फॉल भी आएगा, बट उसके पहले ही अनाउंस मत करो कि ऐसा ही होने वाला है, ऐसे ही होने वाला है. डेवलप दैट पेशेंस एंड कामनेस. आई एग्री. A lot of self-help books talk about letting go of the past, but most people don't know what that really means or how to do it. From your experience, what does breaking free looks like in real life? So basically, it means your ability to discuss about your past without getting disturbed with it. Then you are free from it. No, I need you to come again. That was a very dense thing that you said. मतलब हम अगर डिस्कस करें उन चीजों के बारे में ओपनली विदाउट फीलिंग डिस्टर्ब. अगर मैं अपने डिप्रेशन की स्टोरी शेयर कर रहा हूँ तो आई एम नॉट गोइंग इनटू दैट जोन अगेन. आई एम ओके विद इट. आई डोंट कनेक्ट विद दैट previous version of myself. I know this is a version who is existing at this moment. सो तभी वो ब्रेक फ्री हो पाएंगे. अदरवाइज दैट्स अ फॉल्स वे ऑफ फीलिंग दैट हाँ डिटैच हो गए. सब बोलते हैं ना मूव ऑन इन लाइफ, बट इट्स नॉट इजी. एंड इसके लिए मैंने एक चीज बोला था कि यू टू लिव थ्रू द पेन इन ऑर्डर टू लेट गो ऑफ द पेन. एंड काफी बार थेरेपी में हम वो पेनफुल एक्सपीरियंसेस को वापस से जनरेट करते हैं इन द सेशन. इट इज पेनफुल. People cry. And there are times I am speechless. There's nothing to offer. The silence is the only thing which can offer them कि कोई है हमारे साथ. And sometimes I just cry with them. What will I tell a person अगर वो बोले कि मेरी छोटी बहन was raped and she was murdered? मैं अगर उससे बोल भी दूँ कि हाँ I can understand you. I could just feel her pain. That's it. And that also has a great impact. And eventually when the person is able to process that emotion, transform it, कि ये किसी एक के साथ हुआ बट किसी और के साथ ना हो, शी हैज ब्रोकन फ्री फ्रॉम इट. कि आई वुड वांट दिस टू बी ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव एक्सपीरियंस. जैसे कुछ लोगों को कैंसर हुआ है, देन दे स्टार्ट देयर कैंसर एनजीओ, क्रिएट दैट अवेयरनेस. और ये होता ही है सोसाइटी में. जब तक हम पे ना बीते, हम ज्यादा से ज्यादा एक दिन का कंडोलेंस डिस्प्ले करेंगे या ऐसा कुछ करेंगे. बट जब खुद पे बीतती है तो वी टेक अ ह्यूज स्टैंड फॉर इट. एंड दैट इज व्हाई people need to learn to empathize, not just theoretically on the emotional level as well. Okay, so what inspired you to write this story? It's a self-realization book. I wanted people to realize कि ऐसा नहीं है कि falls नहीं आएंगे, but fall के बाद भी rise possible है. But the definition of rise must be changed. That's what I felt. So that's why the intent of the book was to help the individuals to heal. So you wanting to contribute to other people's lives, is that the reason you studied psychology? Yeah, that was the main reason. Because I also felt that even I was not encouraged to take therapy. Mm-hmm. And तो ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग होंगे. So I felt that I'm able to create that space. एंड जब मेरा वाइवास हो रहा था मास्टर्स में, एंड ये लोग कहते हैं ये अंकल किधर से आगे मास्टर्स करने. एंड द पीएचडी गाइड टोल्ड मी कि आप क्यों ये मास्टर्स कर रहे हो. आई शेयर्ड माय एक्सपीरियंस ऐसा सा डिप्रेशन का फेज हुआ. एंड शी वाज लाइक दीपेन यू आर गोइंग टू बिकम अ ग्रेट थेरेपिस्ट. मैंने पूछा, मैंने व्हाई मैम. इट्स एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग. experiences have transformed you and you're not remained stuck. You pursued psychology. ये एज में जहाँ पे लोग नहीं सोचते. So this can be an inspiration for a lot many people. So I think that's what I want to convey in the book as well. One can inspire to write as well, but you can inspire to rise in life. And rising is just getting grounded. Since we were talking about IGNOU, I want like a personal opinion and guidance from you. I also want to pursue my master's from IGNOU. Would you recommend it? Yeah, it's a great university. बहुत सारे अगेन assumptions हैं. ऐसा होता है वैसा होता है. It's a great university. Curriculum is very beautifully designed and it's one of the largest open university all over the world. In fact, I'm not treating patients in India. I'm treating patients from Dubai as well. That's an organization called as Cheerful. I'm on board with that. So बहुत सारे assumptions है. लोग कुछ judgment pass करते हैं. Ignore is a very मतलब career को आगे लेके जाने के लिए अच्छा है. But it's mainly for those who are working professionals. क्योंकि ये थोड़ा online है. But exams and everything, it's very strict. It's very specific. तो ऐसा नहीं कि degree मिल जाएगा. So a lot of tasks has to be done, but it's mainly for the working professionals. अगर proper एक program मिलता है, one must aspire for that. Because जैसे मैंने बताया कि it was not self learning as well. I read lot of books. Because that's also required. और बिना गुरु के ज्ञान नहीं मिलता. And वो right गुरु मिलना जरूरी है. But those who are facing challenges के family responsibilities है, early भी करना है कुछ. Then IGNOU offers a lot of programs in a lot of various fields. And what advice would you give to budding authors who are struggling with self-doubt? They think that their work is not good enough. No one wants to read it. What advice would that be? Honestly, मैं अपना experience बताता हूँ. When I published the book, what happened is I went to a bookkeeper and he was like, अरे ये तो बहुत छोटी बुक बना दी आपने. ये कोई नहीं खरीदेगा. And I was like, अंदर पढ़ो तो सही क्या है. नहीं नहीं मैं बोल रहा हूँ कोई नहीं पढ़ेगा. And I was disappointed with that. And I was like, क्या दिया मैंने. It's not good enough. And then again I had to rethink. This is enough. वापस से मैं उनसे मिलने गया, उन्होंने बोला कोई खरीदता नहीं, अब ये बुक देखो, वो बुक देखो, इतनी जाड़ी होनी चाहिए। एंड दैट इज वेयर आई रियलाइज, सो वी हैव टू लर्न फ्रॉम आवर मिस्टेक्स, ये हर एक हमारा कोई टीचर ही है। एंड देन आई रियलाइज एंड आई रीपब्लिश द बुक by adding further chapters in the final part where more learnings can be addressed. और फिर जब मैं वापस लेके गया, अरे ये तो बहुत बड़ी बुक है, अच्छी है। सो वो परसेप्शन जो लोगों का है, वो इनिशियली हमें क्रिटिसिज्म लगता है, बट वी हैव टू कंसिडर इट एंड वी हैव टू गो अहेड विद दैट। सो आई थिंक सेल्फ डाउट में नहीं रहना चाहिए, इट हैज टू बी सेल्फ लर्निंग, we have to take the steps ahead. So all those budding authors, I think one must start writing it and things will fall into place eventually. I have been writing this book since past 4 years and up to complete हुई है. So it is a journey where a lot of energies came in unison and the book could get published eventually. Okay. Do you face any writerly block where you have no motivation, no inspiration to continue with your story? Like you have this beautiful story that you want to share with the world, yeah, but there is no intrinsic motivation that's coming from within. Yeah. So basically, I'm not would not categorize myself as a writer. I just express the emotions from those characters' point of view. But blocks बहुत सारे आते हैं, and then that was the difficult part. क्योंकि अगर वापस से you are starting to write again to catch the emotion of those characters and to do justice with that was very difficult. But then eventually you can set a timeline for yourself and purpose driven रहना है, not mood driven. कुछ हो गया सेटबैक में नहीं छोड़ देते हैं, नहीं, you must continue with your journey and help it reach to a conclusion. Did you experience a setback when you were writing this particular story? Yeah, multiple times. Because वो personal tragedies चलती ही रही हैं. And then फिर खुद को remind कराना पड़ता है, Dipen, this is momentary. ये phase जाएगा, और जब वो phase गया तो again I could get back to that writing part. So this purpose was very clear 4 years back also, and आज भी वही है. Wow. So this was an extremely insightful discussion for me. And now I want to take like a moment for you to sign my book. And because you have gotten to know me thoda sa, I would want that you write me a small advice that I could carry with myself for the rest of my life in a note the next time. This is just a second. I'm not sure in my copy is. Just I'll confirm it because I've annotated it. Yeah, this is one. I've gotten a personal message, and I hope everyone watching this video is jealous. Thank you so much, sir, for joining today. I had a wonderful time. Thank you. We're done.